Okay. So I just want to welcome everybody to today's webinar. My name is Kathy Burrell, and I'm the Client Services Coordinator for WeBC. So if you give us a call or send us an email, there's three of us that work in client services. So you might get a hold of me or Archana or Andrea, and we can all answer your problems or answer your questions and hopefully help you solve your problems. Before we start, I just want to let everyone know that today I'd like to acknowledge that we're gathered on the traditional and unceded territory of the Okanagan Syilx people. We recognize, honor, and respect the presence of Indigenous people, past, present, and future. We're located here in Kelowna, BC today. Jen and I are. Barry is, we'll let you know where he is. If you're not sure what traditional territory you're on, Jen is going to put a link into the chat, and feel free to identify kind of where you are in that world and let us know. Say hi, the name of you and your business and where you're located. We do these webinars for women in business all over the province of BC. And for all of you that are on the call today, you know it's a big province and there are people everywhere. So the last thing I want to let you know is that if we only want to provide you with content that you really want to see. So at the very end of today's session, we're going to do a poll, and the poll is going to be, how did you like the webinar? How did you like the material? If you've got an idea or a burning question for another kind of webinar, somebody else you'd like to hear speak, although after you hear Barry speak, you'll want Barry to speak every day, you go ahead and let us know in the poll, and we'll try and get back to you on that and provide you with something that you really want to see. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what some of the services that WeBC offers. We provide support for your small business journey. We offer financing to get your business started and operating capital to fuel your growth. We offer more flexibility than traditional lenders because we take a holistic approach and provide loans based on your business's viability rather than traditional lenders, because they always use formulas. So what this means is we provide loans to a diverse range of women-owned businesses and support you with integrated services, including complimentary training, mentoring, and business advising. So if there's one major reason why you should come to WeBC for a business loan, I would say that would be it. If you get a loan from us for $5,000 or $150,000, we would provide you for the whole term of your loan, which could be 5 years, with complimentary, that means free, training, mentoring, and business advising. We want you to succeed, and so we're here to help you. From essential business skills development to personalized business advice, we know the right questions to ask and the right resources to connect you with. In our mentoring programs, you can connect with a network of women entrepreneurs and experts all around BC who can support and inspire you. You can learn more about our services by going to our website, which is we-bc.ca, and sign up for our e-blast newsletter. Our e-blast goes out once a month, and it just talks about other women-owned businesses in BC, what people are doing. Just in case we're offering a mentoring program, you could sign up right from there. And if we're offering another great webinar, this webinar with Barry today from PAC, Procurement Assistance Canada, is the first one, but we've actually got 3 in the series, so we want you to come to all 3 of them. Okay, today's webinar. I've chatted enough. All right, we would like to welcome our panelists today. So today's topic is federal procurement opportunities. And so the question would be, if you're interested in federal opportunities, but you're not quite ready to respond to an RFX, which stands for Request for Expression of Interest, or request for proposal, etc., there is another way to sell to the federal government. Today, Barry Payne will explain how to navigate low dollar value sales. Barry Payne is a socioeconomic entrepreneur who has personally been involved in securing over 200 million in contracts with the federal government. I mean, that is a big number, and was once its third largest supplier. Today, he'll share how you can use different avenues to secure contracts more efficiently. And really, in business, when you're in business for yourself, time is money. Barry will also talk about the importance of networking in navigating government procurement landscapes and pinpoint the key opportunities to maximize your business potential. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome and introduce Barry Payne. His official title is Supply Team Leader with Indigenous Entrepreneurship Center of Excellence, Procurement Assistance Canada. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and send it over to Barry. Welcome, Barry.
Great, thanks, Kathy, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be here. I think this is my second or third time.
At least.
Yeah, and I love doing these, by the way, because and what you'll find is I'm not a professional speaker, or my presentations are kind of they used to be here, there, and everywhere, but the government's trying to kind of get me to be a little bit more look a little bit more organized. Like all of you, I was a supplier at one point as well. My journey started about 25 years ago, and I'm coming to you today from my home First Nation. I live and work from a First Nation in Ontario called Hiawatha, which is near Peterborough, Ontario. Um, Basically, 25 years ago, I started out of the trunk of my car. Really, that was it. Everybody's, how would you get started? And literally, no money, nothing. Just I got on a supply arrangement, and we'll talk a little bit about what those are. All that is really a glorified pre-qualified vendors list. All it was. And then I started making my trek back and forth to Ottawa, which back then it was like 4 hours each way. Did that for a couple of years. So that's what I call real sweat equity, getting up at 4 a.m. and driving to Ottawa. But it got easier as time went on. Then I kind of changed it, called the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, because as I started building my connections and my contacts, I started getting more and more business there. So it made it easier to get up early in the morning to drive there. What I discovered, I should mention that I came to Procurement Assistance Canada about 3 years ago now. I actually came for 90 days to do a webinar on how to do business with the federal government, and I'm sure many of you guys have sat in on that. And it's about 100 PowerPoint slides and things like that. And first thing I kind of noticed when I was done, it's not the way I did it. We touch on the word RFPs, and RFPs, when I talk to people and I give them advice, you'll never hear me mention an RFP, because to me, an RFP is like, buying a Ferrari. You don't have a driver's license, literally. You can get there, but it takes time to learn. And I hate when I hear people say, well, I responded to 30 or 40 RFPs and never had never was successful in any. And there's a real process, and there's a learning curve, and there's a reason why certain people are successful. I got successful in it, but after a number of years. And not everything you do has to be RFPs. And that's hence is low dollar value. The low dollar value, that's what I call the seed. It's planting the seeds of growing your business. Um, and basically, it's the way I did things. And as I sat back, and I always say, everything for me seems to come in threes. I talk about how to sell to the government. Maybe it's just my attention span is three. One of the things I discovered is there was 3 pages that I used all the time when I was kind of looking to market to a certain department or start out. And I realized, well, that's pretty easy. I can share that. And it's the way I was successful. And as Kathy said, did way over 200 million, probably closer to 300 million. But, these days I've been around long enough that a lot of the actual awards, they've kind of been archived now. So, but if you were to go in and search, it'd probably be easy to find a couple $100 million worth of contracts that I was involved in. Um, as I said, I started out 25 years ago, and I started out selling office furniture to the federal government. It's those cubicles and chairs and that sort of thing, and got on a supply arrangement. And then getting on the supply arrangement, that's just the first part. The second part is you got to be proactive. You got to be out there. You've got to start outreach, just like you would in the private sector. Difference between private sector and the federal government, though, is the federal government's, I call it a warm call, because procurement people are supposed to be transparent, and they're supposed to basically the government's supposed to give everybody the same opportunity across Canada. So when you reach out or you do outreach, it's kind of like a warm call. And over the years, you end up building friendships through these outreaches and things like that, which was kind of cool. Unfortunately, most people I've known are retired now. So my first business was building the offices, and because I'm Indigenous, one of my personal mandates and things, and working from a community, was to hire Indigenous people. And that also became part of my story, my value proposition to departments as my business grew. And um, so in 2006, I'd had so many resumes, and we were growing across Canada, and I'd reach out to all these communities and get resumes. Um, Ended up with so many different resumes and connections in the First Nations that I spun a staffing company off that as well. Um, the furniture business, I exited in 2015. Continued on with my staffing company, which I also exited in 2021 and I sold. So I have no business interest anymore. And then the government came to me and said, "Hey, would you like to help us with outreach doing webinars?" I thought, sure, I'd love to do that. Well, the very first webinar I did, I think I started out and I go, I can't do this. It's not me talking. And I kind of changed and I did it my way. And hence, here I am today talking to you guys on how to do it my way. And I love teaching this because most people think that the government's this big, huge bureaucracy and I can't compete with the big guys and things like, well, guess what? You can't compete with the big guys. And what I'm going to show you is the big guys aren't even in that area anyhow. So you can let them bid on the multi-million dollar contracts at 1% profit. I know folks that made a great living on doing low dollar value. Next slide, please, Kathy. So the presentation I'm showing you, we're showing you today, is the government wanted me to be a little bit more organized. So this is a little bit more jazzy than the one I actually did. But if you know government, I tell people the only thing, slower than Indian time, which I'm native, is federal government time. So by the time they actually got this put together and shared it with me, the numbers are all out of date. Okay, so to show you how to date it is, it's actually the federal government procures 23 to 24 billion. That was 3 years ago when I started. It's 37 billion, around 37 billion now. The area that I like to focus on, I talked about the low dollar value. That's the purchases below 25,000 for goods, which would be things like tables, chairs, anything like hard, and up to 40,000 for services, which would be like consulting and things like that. Construction's up to 100,000, but I rarely get into, and I'm sure there's not too many of the folks in here in the construction. What this is what we refer to as low dollar value, and I this to me is where you start because it's low risk on the part of the procurement people. It gives you an opportunity to get to know them, they get to know you, and and it's there's no comp it doesn't have to be competitive. If they like you, they can simply buy from you directly without having to get other quotes or other people involved in it or a tendering process. None of that. They can just strictly send you an order. That's where I really liked it. And I know a gentleman one I tell the story of there was this gentleman that used to sell these ergonomic chairs, and every time we'd show up at a department, we'd be building like a floor or something. We'd be unloading the trucks, and this guy would show up in a van with, he'd have a suit on, and he'd bring out 3 or 4 of these called Herman Miller Aeron chairs. And back in 2000, they were about $2,500 a piece. He'd come in and he'd, call upstairs and invite a few of people down. Typically, they were the people that were the assistant to a director general or an ADM or a director. People that always had an assistant, and they were typing all day. These ladies would come down or people would come down and he'd show them all the ergonomic benefits of this chair. And they would, fall in love with it because, have the back support and all this kind of thing. They're phenomenal chairs if anybody's ever seen one. They would call upstairs and they'd say to their boss, "Hey, this chair is phenomenal. I'd love to have one." And the boss would simply say, "Put it on my credit card." Credit cards are anything below $10,000. And we do about 2 million credit card transactions a year. Unfortunately for us, that's one what I call gray area of data because we don't track what's being procured in there. But this guy, he would sell 3 or 4 of these chairs every time I saw him. This is 2002. I know he made $500 a chair back then. So you can imagine doing 3, 4 chairs a day, at $500 a pop. And I'm not sure if he did this every day, but I would see him all the time wherever we were, and he'd kind of show up. So I'm thinking that guy's probably living in the Cayman Islands or something now, because and you'll never hear this guy's name. I can't even remember his name, actually. That's how long ago it was. Uh, he'll never show up on a list, and you'll never hear his name. And the thing is, he found a niche, and he was in there, and no competition really. He was just selling a chair that had all these benefits to it. One of the numbers that I like to talk about today is about 80% of all procurement, and this isn't in there, but about 80% of all contracts or procurement, which is actual, contracts given out or orders given out, it's actually under $25,000. So the majority of what we do is low dollar value. You'll see the number 74% of all contracts are under a million. Well, 80% today, I think it was the last figure they said, are under 25,000. So there's a real focus on working with small business. And everything, like I talk to people when I get into coaching, and when I first started, somebody say, "Oh, well, I do catering." I'm like, "Oh, that's a tough one." Because I was never in that space. But now that I think about it, I'm with the federal government. Every time we have a training class or something in the government, there's somebody orders lunch in because we do it over our lunch hours. Well, guess what? That's typically the assistant of a manager or a director or the departmental manager. And you can find them pretty easy. So the federal government buys everything, literally. And actually, there was a previous presentation, I think it was our first one, I was telling Kathy about it the other day. Was a lady she did trauma services, and she was on the presentation, and she actually asked the question. I go, wow, that's way outside my space. I'm really not sure. She came back and watched this video and the three steps, and actually not only did she find out we bought trauma services, she actually found out who was it that bought it, and the supply arrangement that she had to be on. I was like, wow, obviously it works. So that's why I like to share this, because I think the way I show it really mitigates any stress, or you might have that reservation of selling to the federal government. It's easy. And it's like I said, if even if we're introverted at all, we're afraid of people, it's the best market to start out. I call it a foundation as well, because you know what, you don't want the federal government to be your one and only customer. But it's a great foundation. It'll give you references so you can use to leverage it to get outside of the government and things like that. I should also preface that Procurement Assistance Canada has regions right across Canada. We have offices and regions across Canada. Everything we do is free. And so you can actually reach out to your local regional office and they'll help you with this, or you reach out to me. And that's what I love doing, is kind of helping people navigate how to do this. We can kind of sit and go into the three steps a little bit further if you kind of still a little bit confused. Next slide, please. As I was talking about, there's 3 pages, and this is my first page I would go to every time. And what this was, and I put this on my phone, I suggest for you folks to do it as well. You'll be sitting at Timmy's or Starbucks or whatever. You'll say, I wonder if the government buys this. And this is a link that's it's in the chat. It's everything the government buys over $10,000. Anything below 10, as I said, is you typically done on a credit card. This is everything we bought since 2009. So that's a pretty good historical record to go back and see if we buy. And what I like about it is, like I said, I can be sitting at Timmy's or Starbucks and I'll get a thought, a light bulb going, I wonder if they buy this. And I put it in there and it'll tell us right away whether the federal government has and do they buy it. And if they do buy it, how do they buy it? Next slide, please. So when you land on this site, I like to show so people can actually recognize what it's supposed to look at. You click on that live link, this should be the page that would come up. And when this page comes up, you can use keyword searches that pertain to your industry. And when you do that, it'll actually populate the page just as you see here on the right, with all the contracts that would actually have that keyword. It'll be highlighted. So in the case of the search, I put in the keywords would be low dollar value. Next slide, please. And when you see it in that line, so if you did trauma or whatever, you can put that in there, furniture, you put it in there. And what it'll do is it'll populate a whole page. And you kind of scroll down that page and you look for contracts or procurement that kind of fit what your product is or your services, and you kind of and there's a lot of detail that can be here. Even if you know who your competitor is, you may want to say, hey, I might not know exactly this, but I know somebody that does something just like me, so I'll put that in the keyword search. So we use the word low dollar value, and you'll see what happens. The click for details. If we click on the ESC automation, that'll take us to another page, which I'll show you in a second, and it gives us greater detail. But scrolling, coming down, you'll see the 3 zeros that's highlighted in yellow. That indicates it's a supplier arrangement, which means it's a pre-qualified list that you get on. And it's not a competitive list. It's just a list that you need to get on. There's mandatory products like furniture, office supplies, professional services. Procurement people have to use the vendors that are on those lists. But even once you get on that list, again, you can revert back to low dollar value to get started. Okay, so when you click on this page, or you would click on ESC automation, it would actually give you more details in the background. It would, tell you who the department was that bought it, and then who, in some cases, who was the person in the department that bought it, that kind of stuff. So I'd keep that page open, and then I would actually go to my what I call my page two. Next slide, please. This is what we call our government electronic phone book, or GEDS, we affectionately call it. This is the phone book that contains everybody in the entire federal government except for national defense, CSIS, RCMP, organizations like that. And if you reach out to your regional procurement office, they'll actually help find the people there that you can reach out to. Kathy, I think I saw we were going to answer questions as we went along to make it easier for people, right? Focus. And I
Yeah.
think we
Did you
saw
see
one pop
Nora's
up.
question? Yeah. So Nora is asking a question for Barry. What if I have a new service that the government's not asking for, but they will benefit from? Is there a way to get in front of the right people to introduce the service and showcase how they'll benefit? That's a great question.
It is, and especially in this day and age, right? Like
Yeah.
AI and things like that. So what you could do there, obviously there's no, pre kind of history of contracts because it is a new service or something they've never considered. I would actually use this next page, this page two that I'm going to talk about, and the phone book. And I would actually go into this phone book and use it. And can we go to the next page, please? And what you'll see in this phone book is you can keyword search here. So we can search by if I'm starting out from scratch and I don't know like who to talk. I use two words, procurement or contracting. But what I do here more importantly is if you're starting out in the government, you're going to start selling. You want to track where you're going and where you've been. And what I mean by you want to be methodical about that because knowing the government and knowing the departments is gold. Every department that last my count, I think there's about 172-ish, I think. They all have their own personality. They all have some will do some like love doing low dollar value. Others don't like doing low dollar value. A certain department may be a little tougher to deal with, or the people may be others may not. So you want to record that kind of stuff. And I used something called HubSpot back in the day, and it was free. And so it allowed me to methodically, you know, kind of, I guess, strategize is a word. So what I would do here, if we can go to the next page, because this is just the landing page, I would actually go to the next page, which allows me to do departmental listing. Methodically start. I would start at the letter A and work my way down. And then, by doing so, I would actually be able to track where I've been and because there's a real and another thing I noticed when I did my outreach, and sorry, it's a long kind of winded answer to your question, but I thought hopefully you'll understand when I kind of finish this. Another thing I realized when I started outreach is again, it was like 3 times or 4 times that I had to outreach to the people before I got anywhere. And what I mean by that, I would send them an email. And by the way, they get hundreds of emails a day. And there's a kind of a thing we call one and done, where people send you an email and they never hear from them again. So procurement people are very busy. And typically, they won't respond on the first email. And so I always say, be very short. Just say, hey, it's so and so. I'd like to set up a time to chat with you. That's it. And I even put them, I'm a woman-owned business, and I like to because that's very I think that's very important. But don't say a lot because chances are they're not going to read it. Then you go to your HubSpot and you say to HubSpot, remind me in a week or so to reach out to this person again. And in a week or so, HubSpot says, reach out to this person. Then I do it by telephone. And I say, hi, you leave them a voicemail message, who I am and what I want to chat with them briefly. And I'm a woman-owned business, but make it short because I get so many calls. The next thing that I go back to HubSpot, I remind myself, okay, in a week or so from now, remind me to reach back to these people. What you're showing these people in procurement is, A, you're serious. You really want to talk to them because we get so many people that come and go that you never hear from them again. But even more importantly, the people in procurement have a fiduciary responsibility to actually get back to you as a Canadian taxpayer. If you were to go to your member of parliament and say, you know what, I've been chasing Department of Agriculture. Okay, I've been emailing them, I'm phoning them, nobody gets back to me. That's taken very seriously. A lot of crap hits the fan within the chain. So that's why I always say three is the charm, three times is the charm. And in that third outreach, in the email, I'd say, hey, I've been trying to reach you by email, by voicemail, this is what I do. And I'd outline what it is that why I want to talk to them and what I do. Chances are that person you're reaching out to isn't the person anyhow, but they know who is. And it typically, if you start high enough, like a manager or something like that above or senior person, they will CC in the person that is just to get off their desk. That's why I call three times as a charm. Now you actually have the person who is, and you reach out to them directly. Getting back to the answer or question that was asked is if it's a new product or service, I would go here, look for the departments that may be inclined or you may be interested in something you think they may be interested in this new technology or service. And then you go to that department and you would start at the top because basically the people down below who would be in procurement and contracting, they're the delivery mechanism. They're the end. You need to get to the people before that actually consider and want to know about your technology. So I would actually probably start with a, excuse me, a director general or something like that. They will get back to you if you reach out to them enough times and record all this because you want to know where you're going and who you're talking to because you may have the wrong person and you don't want to contact the wrong person. Knowledge is so important. Somebody will come back and say, you know what, I'd love to chat with you. Really busy right now. I got my daughter's graduation coming up and I got this coming up. And I'd make note of that. And when I finally got to talk to them and say, hey, how did your daughter's graduation go or whatever? And they go, oh man, you got a great memory. And I'm like, no, I wouldn't let them know I'm using it all HubSpot, but and so that's very important to start out building that relationship. So that's the page two. And page two kind of allows us to kind of really methodically plan what we want to go and how we're going to go and who to talk to. So now we're starting to build a database of connections. We get in and we finally get to talk to these people. From page one, we'll know whether it was a supply arrangement. So if it's a supply arrangement, we want to talk to the person in that department from page one or whatever that department is. How do I get on the supply arrangement? And they'll tell you, if you have a supply arrangement number from page one, it helps us a whole lot find out how do you get into page who to talk to. So that's a great thing. It's a great tool. Also, if you're just you're just starting out and you want to sell them a chair or something, you use the words procurement or contracting here in these departments, and that'll kind of take you to the people that actually do what I call the actual engagement of buying. What I like to explain to people that the word contracting and procurement are very general terms, and these are really typically people that are paper, and I hate using the word paper pushers, but they're the people that bring all the information together and actually do the contract. So when you see an RFP out there and go, geez, or request for information, the person putting that out isn't really the technical authority or the person that wanted to buy it. They're just the people that are following the legal contracting, the procurement. There's rules to be followed. Well, that's them, but they can only buy or put out the information of what they receive. And that's why it's very important to get into a department early on. And early, what I mean by early on is, and in my case, it was furniture. And if I didn't get into a department, they didn't know I existed, and they didn't know my products, the specs of my products existed. So when they put out an RFP for certain, to do a floor of office cubicles, they didn't know I exist. The only specs that they could use are the ones that they've already been given. So an example I like to use here that turned into a success story was I approached Department of Foreign Affairs. And at the time I approached them, did the outreach, finally got to meet them, got in to see them. Back then you had to go see them in person. Today everything is virtual, which is great. And most people really, really prefer the virtual now in Ottawa. And you like federal government people don't want to go downtown to Ottawa. They live in Stittsville, Canada, and all that. They'd rather work from home. And so that's where the playing field has really been leveled. I had to travel to Ottawa back in the day. So when I started at Foreign Affairs, I went in, I sat down with them. I knew they were with another manufacturer, actually an American manufacturer that was supplying all their office systems and things. I didn't go in and ask for their office, their whole contract. I said, you know what? I sell chairs as well. Everybody buys chairs. I would just love if you could give us an opportunity. Not so they gave us an opportunity. They called us up, went in, Barry, we need some chairs or a couple of chairs, and I sold them a couple of chairs, and a couple of chairs went from, hey, Barry, do you guys sell desks? Well, yeah, we sell desks as well. And so each time they just kept giving us a little more, little more, little more. Got to the point where, hey, Barry, can you guys reconfigure a section for us, which is the cubicles? Yeah, we can do that. That's what we do. And so we did that. They got to know us, and they also got to know the manufacturer that we represented. It was a company called Technion. Uh, Specs for a Technion workstation were a lot different than the specs for the manufacturer that they were using. But what happened was, over the period of time, they got to know us, we got to know them. When it came time to put the tender up, because all these things need to be renewed every 3 or 4 years, the specs were broad enough for us to actually submit a bid in the RFP. We were not only able to submit the bid, we actually ended up winning Foreign Affairs. And so that's how we took a seed of selling one chair and then finally ended up with a contract. That took about 3 years. And it was a great contract. I just saw somebody work for Technion in Calgary, which is great. Actually, I know a lot of folks out there. And the funniest part of this even goes on a little bit further, though, and for those of you that may be older, was at the same time that we had won that I'm going to say within a year, came out in the media that the Americans had bugged Angela Merkel's cell phone. She was the Chancellor of Germany. I thought, wow, that may be an opportunity here. So I went back to GEDS, this government phone book, and looked up all the Department of Foreign Affairs. It lists all the ambassadors around the world, the embassies. I actually then took it upon myself to inform all these people at these embassies, sharing knowledge and expertise, that, hey, if they can bug Angela Merkel's cell phone, what do you think they could do to a workstation that has 4,000 different pieces? Coolest thing that ever happened. We got Rome, we got Madrid, we got London, we got Paris, and nobody wanted to go there. So it was like, wow, so not only we had this standing on, we ended up getting these contracts all around the world. So the guys, my installers were loving it. They're traveling everywhere except for me. I didn't get to go anywhere. But that's just how you can take something, a little seed, and grow it. So that's the page 2. I keep that open. Something I should mention as well in here is I use Google a lot. And actually, as I'm following this presentation, Kathy, this is not the one we're going to show, I think. I'm going to go back to my other one because I
Okay.
realize, yeah, this is glitzy and everything, but it's not as you guys will know what I mean when I send you the other one because it'll talk
Okay.
about
So you're
Google. I
gonna
have an
send it to
example of
Jen,
Google.
Barry?
Sorry?
You're gonna send your thing to Jen and she's gonna share it, or did
Yeah,
you
yeah, for
share it already?
sure.
Okay.
Because it'll actually, on the one I did up originally, I just realized is I actually had examples of searching Google.
Okay.
So I'll
Google's
stop
great.
sharing this one and you'll send me the other one, Barry? Correct?
No, we'll keep sharing this one.
Okay.
The other one, because the other one that I do actually, when I do coaching one-on-one, that's the one I use. So this is
Okay.
more of a presentation one. That's more of your homework.
So I'll just
Okay.
send that in the follow-up email.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, awesome.
That'll be great because everybody's going to have questions after this one. I
Yeah.
think
Perfect.
that other one actually will show you examples of what happens when you do keyword
Awesome.
search and
Okay.
the Google. So Google's great because what it's going to do is it'll actually even show you other companies that are on that supply range. It kind of gives you kind of like, I call this like a stew. We're putting all the recipe. These are all the ingredients to get to where we got to go. So, and I keep all these pages open, by the way. So I have the first page would be that disclosures. The next page would have been, could be this, but Google and this are kind of back and forth, but I keep them all open. Then I go to my third and last page, which is next page. That's the active standing offer one. We could go there, Kathy.
Okay.
This is an interesting one. This actually, the government's it's called the SOSA. It would be the next slide after this. Yes. I don't even know what that word attention means, but anyhow, okay. So this page, the third page, now we're talking 3 pages. This page actually, I call it the cha-ching page as a procurement or as a supplier. It essentially lists every active supply arrangement and standing offer in the entire federal government. Why do we create standing offers and supply arrangements? We create these because it's things we buy a lot of. It's essentially was created for procurement people to go find what they need when they need something. They go to this and they can find all the suppliers. And again, it's a keyword search. You can search by from page 1, you would have a supply arrangement number. You can use that. You can use a company, if it's competitors, you can use that. I used to like putting competitors in because then I see all the standing offers they have if they're a part of them. So it's kind of give you the background info. It's great. I call it the opportunities page because you can start at page 1 and scroll all the way down and it'll show you everything we buy. So if you're looking for opportunities, if you're looking for organizations like, hey, I'm looking for more products to market. That's a great place to start because you can reach out to one of these active standing offer holders. And let's face it, they should want to talk to you for 2 reasons. A, you're approaching them and you're not asking to be an employee or anything like that. You're asking to be a salesperson for them or, work with them. So you're free. And coming from that side of the world, you love when people come to you and say, hey, I'd like to work with you and I'm going to be free.
Yeah.
So this is a great place to find opportunities. And as I said, it gives you a wealth of information because can we go next page? One thing so this is what it'll look like. So they actually did this one. So this is what it'll look like when you hit that page. The only thing is they've changed it on the right instead of where that red arrow says download now. It's got a kind of a sign that goes, you go to the resource and you click on it. They've changed the word. I don't know why. So when you download it or you go to the resource, it opens up as an Excel spreadsheet. Next page, please.
So, Barry, can
Sure.
you talk a little bit about like if somebody is just getting into this, they are successful, they get a couple of contracts, like a dollar value, contracts, they're doing well. Can these searches also lead you to like perhaps partnering up with somebody else who's in the same situation to maybe
That's
make
what
a bigger thing?
100%. That's why I called how you can look for opportunities here. You can look for companies, much bigger companies possibly that are on here. A good example would be consulting. The big 4 like Deloitte, Accenture, KPMG. None of them they'll have a contract on here like a supply arrangement or a standing offer contract in pro services. They subcontract everything. Right?
Oh,
They like the trauma services would be a good example, right? Like you would reach if you did trauma services, you could approach a Deloitte or Accenture that the services. Pro services is huge, by the way. Like there's categories and categories, but that's a real how you find who to talk to in terms of opportunity. Or you could find somebody that's similar to you. You may even recognize somebody that's on there and say, hey, oh yeah, we should work together. I see that happening all the time.
yeah.
Because
So Barry,
they're
there's another question in the
sure.
chat about, we're in BC here, and French is certainly not something that a lot of us speak on a daily basis. The question from Sarah is, she provides PR services. Is it a procurement requirement that services need to be provided in both official languages?
No, not at all.
Oh, good.
Actually, we have three different ways we actually provide services that I know of. One would be English. French is, depending on the crowd or the group would be French. And the third one is you guys experience yourself with Sarah Ann, sign language.
Yeah,
We do that, right? But it's only when it's required.
yeah.
Okay, so and even if you were actually to go into Quebec, you wouldn't have to it wouldn't have to be just strictly, bilingual or French.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
that's listed on when you come to the low dollar value page, like it's listed, isn't it? That this has to be either French or English or
yeah.
yeah. Or
And what
when you
great thing
talk
about low dollar value, below
yeah.
25K or 40K, there's really very few rules
Okay.
or what I call criteria, right?
Yeah.
Or mandatories. That's pretty open.
Yeah.
Because you may even speak to somebody in Quebec, but
Yeah.
you don't have to, and by the way, it goes both ways. They have to speak English too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I always found when I was dealing with people in Quebec, in my office, by the way, I had an office in Ottawa. When I went across, I'd always bring somebody with me from my company that was fluently bilingual.
Mm,
It just made it much easier for them. And
yeah.
one of the biggest commodities that we spend money on is translation. We have translation services, right? So
Mm.
that's something big. And I think I heard, was it VR they said they did? Virtual
Oh, no
reality?
kidding.
Was that
No.
what the person was asking about in being bilingual VR services?
No, she was saying that she is a PR person, a public relations person.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
PR,
yeah.
not VR. Yeah.
Yeah, 100% you don't have to be.
Okay.
And actually that would be a great one for them
It
to put
would.
in here to keyword search public relations, because I have a feeling there'd be a lot of public relations in there, right?
Yeah.
Um, and there probably is a supply arrangement for that, I would
Okay.
suspect. But again, you'll see some that say you have to be like you can offer services in French and in English, or bilingual. That'll
Yeah.
be in there. For something like PR services, I would think it'd be a great spot to find bigger companies that you could work with as well, right? Um,
Yeah. And somebody's asking as well, Barry, like this spreadsheet that you're showing now, the SOSA spreadsheet, like, is this something that you did on your own or is this?
Not at all.
Oh,
If we
okay.
back up one page, we
Okay.
said we weren't going to jump around, but let's back up one page
Somebody wants to see where you got
or
it.
3 pages. We're going to back up to where the number three, it's a number 3 page, if you remember that.
Uh, oh,
It's the page 3. It was just
okay.
after the gets. You'll see if we can go back. Right. Okay. So right here.
Yeah. Oh, SOSA.
Yeah.
There.
Now go to the
Okay.
next page,
Okay.
and it's going to have that. See where it says,
Oh,
okay, are the 2 red arrows?
yeah, yeah.
So when you land on this page, this is, by the way, open public. This is open data, I think is the word they call it.
Oh,
You'll
okay.
see the URL
Yep.
there, and
It's
then
still
you'll
the
see
same.
the
Okay.
download. They don't call it download anymore. I think I put it in the email I sent you guys. There was a word I put next to it. It's like a little arrow, a box that you click on, and it takes you there.
It takes
And
you there.
yeah,
Okay.
and it'll take you to it'll instead of the word download, they use that, and it'll take you to this Excel spreadsheet.
Okay.
Now
So,
I recommend don't print it, and it'll be like 3 inches thick,
yeah.
and it'll be out of date tomorrow because it's constantly being updated.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Go
Right.
to resource. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah. That's it.
That's
Perfect.
I would have just stuck with the word download. I don't know. Like, why do you have to go like you change it, right?
I know. Why
Um,
are they why are they
yeah,
making things more complicated?
yeah. But when you click on that, go to resource, the next page is what we get, and
So
that's this
somebody's
page.
asking then about that SOSA page, like how do we get on this list? Are there calls for submissions? And if so, are they
So
industry specific or general calls?
great question, because that's why this list is like a really, really good tool.
Yeah.
So one of the things we do, this list, you can search by name, you can search by supply arrangement number, which we may have got from page 1 if it was a supply arrangement.
Yep.
We can do keyword searches. How do we do that? If you look at the red arrow, you'll see a little magnifying glass.
Oh
Click
yeah.
on that, and then go to the next page, and a little box will pop up. And in that
Oh,
box, you actually can do your keyword search. So if
okay.
you actually had your supply arrangement number that was the one you needed to get on, you
Yep.
put that in there. But in this case, I used the word Adirondack, which was my furniture company back then. I'm surprised they let me keep that in there. But anyhow, so what happens when I hit that, it'll actually highlight behind. If you kind of look down from the little box, you'll see like a green box and the word Adirondack.
Yep.
So it actually will list all the contracts that either have that keyword search in it, the supply arrangement number, the company name, they'll all show up. That's a great way to find who your competitors are as well. So if you can go to the next page, I'm hoping that it shows it in red. Yeah, I think it does. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, no, it doesn't. Okay, so we'll go back. Sorry.
Okay.
So we put our keyword search in there. So in that question that you were asking about the list, so we would actually put in was trauma services. It'll come up and it'll show us, and we go all the way across, and you'll look under the cell number R, you'll see EQ. That's the supply arrangement number.
Okay.
You look under cell R. You take that, you can then come either to Procurement Assistance Canada and say, hey, how do I get on this? And I probably do this anyway. This is the supply arrangement number I need to get on. This does my services. We will then pack it doesn't matter where you're on Canada, they'll actually help you find out who the contracting officer is for that.
Okay.
Okay. Most of the supply arrangements, the standing offers are live. They're just constant rather than wait for the end, then we retender. They just keep them live. And those of you that are on LinkedIn, you may see something that's from the Canadian Taxpayers Association talking about a 25-year AI supply arrangement. And they're going, that's crazy, another boondoggle. That isn't the boot. That's a great idea because all it is a list. So
Yeah.
rather than every 3 or 4 years, I got to reapply to get on this list. I'm good for 25 years.
Yeah.
And it does until I get a contract, there's no money being spent. It's just
No.
a list. And so
So
there's a little
Barry,
bit. Yeah, go
somebody's
ahead.
got a question about like a quick clarification of this page of this SOSA list here.
Yeah.
Is this spreadsheet a list of active contracts or supply arrangements at the federal level and just used for a research tool to get you where you want to get started, right?
Yeah, well, it is an active list. So it's an
Okay.
active of
All
everything
right.
that we have current. This is
Okay.
everything we're buying currently. And like I
Okay.
said, last time I counted, it was about 10,000 of them. 10, it's the only, when I hear the word research, the only people who use it for research is us.
Yeah.
The procurement people use it as a tool to find out who to reach out to when they need that product. It'll, in the case of furniture, they need to, and once you're over 25,000, you need to have, it needs to be competitive. So I need 3 or 4 different quotes. Well, where do I find the companies that sell? On this list. Okay, so that's how you find it. For us, it shows us, does the government buy a lot of it? And if it shows up here at a supply range, it means they buy a lot of it. That's why I would focus, if you can find stuff that's on this list,
Yeah.
it's not a one-off thing. It's something we buy all the time, like office supplies,
Yeah.
pro services, furniture. Those are things we buy every day, all the time. Okay. Um,
So Barry, we're at about 10 to 11.
okay.
So why don't we wrap up? You've only got one more slide left, don't you?
Yeah,
And
I think
then
the next slide
we
was
can do
just,
questions. Is that
yeah.
okay?
Yeah, and the next slide was just my contact info. We did that anyhow. So
Yeah,
maybe actually timing wise, it was probably pretty good because
I thought it was pretty good.
yeah, so we can share this one, and then
Okay.
I'll give you the one that I call the real kind of the how-to at home. It'll
Okay.
actually show you steps, right?
Okay. So I
Okay.
want to let everybody know too that, Barry is available for your questions or your emails, or your phone calls. Like he's kind enough to say, hey, if you guys need anything, let me know. And we're going to send all that information to you in the follow-up email. So we'll open it up for questions now, but just in case anybody's got like sort of things that are a little bit more pressing, let's just finish this. And then what we'll do is we'll go for questions. So thank you very much to Barry. Barry is consistently one of the people that people say in our webinars that they get the most value out of speaking to. It's amazing. So thank you very much, Barry, for today.
Yeah,
And
love doing this stuff.
we'll throw it open to a couple of questions. And again, specific questions about which database and how to move back and forth. If you've got some general questions for Barry, that would be great. I'm just going to finish this so we can devote everything to Barry. And basically, yeah, thanks so much, Barry. The information that you share is incredible. And these, the 55 people that are on the call today, you could have changed their life with this presentation. So we so appreciate it. I want to let everybody know that at WeBC, we have a bunch of these on-demand programs that are only, I think, $10 to download, and you have 90 days to work through them. You'll end up with an HR plan. You'll end up with a strategic marketing plan. You'll end up with financial fitness. If you want more information, go to our website or contact us, and you'll get our contact information in the follow-up email. I want to let everybody know that we're doing a PST workshop next week, which is, again, everybody needs to know about taxes, what you have to charge. So we hope you'll join us for that. And yeah, this is the end, but not the end because Barry's still going to chat. And I want to remind people, if you could hang on till after the questions are over and do our little poll, we'd love that. Okay, anybody have any questions for Barry? I can look at them in the chat, or any questions, or just put up your hand and ask a question. Anybody? Go ahead.
Something, yeah. Oh, we have one? Okay, great. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I don't see one yet.
Oh, okay. So
yeah.
maybe I'll talk about, I shared a couple of another document with yourselves as well. If you remember, that it was called Synopsis on Equity Deserving Groups. The synopsis I put together was something I used when I was on the supplier side. And basically, it was what I call I identified the opportunities that were available. I use this when I would actually approach a company on why you should partner with me.
Okay.
This is what I bring to the table as an Indigenous supplier back then. You can actually take that document and look at it, because there's organizations like WeBC, there's KMC, Canadian Aboriginal Minority Supplier Council, there's CCAB, who you guys may have heard of, Canadian Council Indigenous Business. They have all these corporate supporters within their organizations. And in the case of CCAB, in their directory, you can see all the big companies like the RBCs or CIBCs, all these organizations. It will give you actually the contact info of somebody to reach out to at those corporate entities. People go, well, it's in the CCAB, so it's Indigenous. I like to think that what it tells me is they're open to diverse procurement if they're a member of any of those groups.
Yeah.
So chances are they want to hear from you.
Yeah.
So the synopsis, and they'll share it tomorrow, is you look at that and you look at the KMC and you look at the CCAB and you look at WeBC Canada has a whole bunch, and they're actually warm calls. You'll reach out to them and say, hey, I'm a woman-owned business, certified woman-owned business, and because you need to be certified. And that's my favorite word. I say it 100 times. It just makes everything so much easier, takes away any hesitation on the part of the procurement people. But you can go to those lists or those organizations, and you can find possible clients.
Great.
Right.
I've got 2 questions in the chat for you, Barry. The first one is there a similar process for the provincial government? Because this is all about federal procurement, which trickles down to all the provinces, doesn't it?
Well, I would say if you can deal with the provincial government, if you can deal with any provincial government, the federal government's easy.
Yeah.
Right. It's the opposite, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. So provincial's a little bit, they're all different, because here in Ontario, we have something called VORs, vendor of records.
Okay.
And in most cases, if you're not on the VOR, they won't do any business with you at all, which is kind of tough. But there's, again, you can, depending on the province, they all have directories, like phone books as well, that are published, right? So you can almost, our page too, you can almost do that as well.
For sure.
And I use Google a lot of times, because I'll use my keyword search, and then I'll put like British Columbia next to the keyword, like, procurement, and then I don't know, trauma services, British Columbia, province of British Columbia, and it'll list contracts from the provincial level. So you can do stuff like that, right?
Great.
Another way to do it is, so I was just going to talk about LinkedIn, using LinkedIn to reach out to people at the provincial levels.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. No, that makes sense. And again, LinkedIn, a lot of people, it's like they had a LinkedIn account and then they let it lapse and they don't go anymore because they think they're going to get a ton of cold calls. LinkedIn, like everything else, every other social platform, has moved with the times. And even if you used it 5 years ago, it's much better now. There was a question from Ms. Shuren. She had a question. You want to ask your question, Ms. Shuren? Just go ahead and unmute yourself.
Sure,
go ahead.
So I had heard before that I think you had mentioned it, you get on the list, there's a call for lists every 3 years or something like that. And I was a little bit confused about that. I don't know if it's industry specific or general, but then also you said that if you go through the chart that you had and then you find the number and then you call and ask to get on that number list, then it's a long-term list. So I was wondering, is there a difference in these like approaches or
Um, well, it's all, first of all, the easiest way to get started is to find the number for the list you want to be on, the supply arrangement standing offer number. It makes it easier for us to help you with it. The
for your
commodities, depending on the commodity, they could be 3 years. Things like consulting and pro services now, there is actually no call anymore. It's every 3 months you can actually get on pro services. And so it's an ongoing process. And that's where I think that 25-year AI thing, you see the taxpayer, I think that's where they kind of got misinformed, because they probably have an end date 25 years out,
Hmm.
and it'll change by that. But by giving us that number, you find out that particular supply rate, we can actually help you find out it. In some cases, it might be every 2 or 3 years, or in the case of pro services, it's ongoing. Typically, we're getting away from what we call standing offers, and we're going to supply arrangement. And supply arrangements typically tend to be ongoing. There doesn't seem to be a renewal period. Okay.
oh, they're different.
Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah.
But again, if you were, I'm not sure where you're located, but if you're in BC, you reach out to PAC BC
Yep.
with that supply arrangement. And you know what, if you have trouble finding it, you can reach out to me and I'll help you find it.
Yeah,
Um,
this is one of the
yeah.
great, the questions again, Barry is available, by email. We're sending it out in the follow-up email.
Yeah.
You can book an appointment to speak with him and, kind of tell him where you're at specifically, your specific questions, and, you can get way ahead that way. So that's something that's on the table, and I encourage every single person on this call to take advantage of that.
And we're free.
Yes, and you
And
are
I'm
free.
yeah, and
Barry,
you
you're
can.
priceless. You're not free. You're just
Well, you're not gonna have to pay anything for it, which is good, because we know there's a lot of people that are trying to charge for that service.
yeah.
That's why I love coming here. And so in your case, if you're having trouble finding that supply arrangement, I'll help you do it. Usually after I do a presentation, I get 8, 9, 10 people I kind of follow up with a one-on-one that kind of need a little bit more assistance. The other document that we're going to send out, I was trying to make it as if I could do it, and I call it dummy proof then. And it just kind of walks you step by step. But it would be, if I had to show that here, we'd be still presenting.
Yeah.
So
And-
yeah, please don't get stressed out. I like to say I'm a stress mitigator. So you reach out to, and the Pac Pacific, if you're in Pacific, they're by far the best team in the country. Right.
That specific can here in
Yeah,
BC.
they're amazing.
So, we can put you in touch with them as well. So somebody else had a question about how to apply to be certified as a woman-owned business. And we do have someone on as a contractor at WeBC that we can hook you up with, and she can explain the process. So if you're interested, send us an email at hello@we-bc.ca. So that's great. Somebody else has a question, Natalia. Absolute game changer. I'm habitual RFP searcher and applier, never getter. That you mentioned at the beginning. I'm wondering if you could clarify the SOSA list. Is this a list I try to get onto before doing the outreach, or is it a list I end up on once there's a successful first step contract? Good question, Natalia.
It's not a list that you get on. It's part of the 3 steps that you use for your total strategy for outreach on where to start. I like I said, the SOSA list is things we buy a lot of. So think of it that way. And so if you want something to sell something to the government, you want to see if we buy a lot of it. And that'll be on that list.
Yep.
And again, you take all this information, you put it together, and you use page 2, which is again on who to talk to start your outreach. And
Yeah.
again, this is something that you can reach out to me and I can kind of advise you how to do it through the background. I like everybody to reach out to me on LinkedIn, because one of the things I do on LinkedIn, we hear about how it's evolving and things like that. And a lot of people, they got on and they gave up on it. What we've really seen how it's really evolved, and the best way is be introduced to somebody. And once you join my LinkedIn, I have over 7,000, and most of the people I have are federal government, a lot of provincial government, and corporations and First Nation, in my case, First Nations. But what I can do is I can introduce you to somebody. So once you join my LinkedIn, my connections become your connections. And I tell people I don't have the time to actually go through my connections to pick out people for you. But if you go through it and pick out people, I'll introduce you to it. The funniest, they all know that I'm federal government now. And I used to do that before, and it was about 70%. It was around 70%, I think, that people would accept and say, yeah, yeah, please follow up. Here's my email. Now that I'm federal government, it's like 90%. It's
I follow
crazy.
Barry on LinkedIn. He's great. He's always posting a million good things on there.
And here's something else I'm allowed to do for everyone. I'm allowed to actually take, if you share something about your company, I can put it on my LinkedIn and post it.
Hmm.
All right. And that's
Yeah,
free.
networking.
Okay.
Great.
So
So
I hope
Barry,
that answers your question about the SOSA, but please, and reach out to me and I can walk you through it again and we can kind of use your actual keywords.
for sure. So a couple of people had to go because they've got appointments at 11. So we're going to wrap up now. So Jen is going to launch the poll. For those of you that are left in the room, we'd really love you to take a couple of seconds and fill out the poll for us. And then we're going to stop the recording. And you're going to get an email from us later today or tomorrow with all these links, Barry's contact information, our contact information. Take a minute to digest it all, figure out what you're interested in, and then reach out. Barry is the resource of the mother of all resources. So, we're glad you're on this call today, and we really want to provide value for you. We want you to get that first contract, a $10,000, a $25,000, a $40,000 low value dollar contract. So please. And thanks again for Barry for being here today. It was wonderful. And join us for the next two. We've got 2 other pack sessions coming up, I think, over the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So we'd really love to have you. And you guys are great. You filled out the poll. It's beautiful. Thanks, Barry, again for being part
No
of this.
worries.
And thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
And
I'm
Jen, you
hoping,
can go ahead.
and I was going to say, and you'll never hear this from another federal employee in your lifetime. I tell everybody this, bug me. Right.
That's
And
great.
really reach out to me, bug me, because I cover the entire country, so I get busy. So sometimes it takes me a few days to get back to people. I never thought I'd be in that position. So I really tell people, bug me, please, because and I'll even say it, and then I forget. I'm getting up there. And so please don't be a stranger. Just I that's why I can't stress enough about the mitigation of stress. I was a subject matter expert of doing everything wrong for the first 10 years, really. And that's what I through time and bumps and bruises, I learned the process. And it isn't that difficult. It really is easy. And that word RFP, let's leave that away for now.
Yeah. No, it's easy when you know who to talk to and somebody can talk to you like a person, not a computer. We're not AI yet.
Yeah, not yet.
Okay, thanks a
All right.
lot for everybody. We'll see you
Thank
another
you.
time. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, Barry. Jen, you can stop the recording and let us go anytime you're ready.